is going to be recorded and I'll be making it available after the session's finished. So welcome to the Term 4 Central Queensland GEG for interactive slides for Term 4. We're indebted this afternoon to have with us Rolf Fotenhauer, Chris Betcher, Laura Ord, who are all going to present on a range of topics for both primary schools and also for colleges, and to Team Longreach who are joining us this afternoon. Hopefully everyone will get something out of this. So one of the questions I'm most frequently asked is, how do I get some interactivity in my classroom now that we don't have Promethean whiteboards? One of my observations about the old model of using Promethean whiteboards is that we had one student doing the work and 20-something passengers just sitting along for the ride. Now that most of our schools have VVs in their classrooms, we have the opportunity to engage many more students, even if your school isn't in a one-to-one environment. So small groups can engage on an iPad or some other similar device. And then from a teacher's perspective, they can pass their device, which might be connected to the VV, which is connected to the TV, over to kids. And that can be kind of like inviting kids to come up to the old interactive whiteboard. The difference is the interaction is now on the device. The other major difference is that more kids are engaged. And I think one of the easiest ways to get meaningful interaction is using Google Slides, which is readily available to us. The key here is, though, purposeful interaction, not just activity sheets for the sake of it. So as I said, we've got a range of presenters this afternoon who are going to look at slides from the very basic stuff all the way up to some skills for power users. So if you've joined us and you want to ask some questions, just unmute and we'll go from there. I'm going to kick off the afternoon with a bit of an eclectic mix of some of the really basic stuff that teachers have asked. So if you give me a sec, I'll just share the screen. I've also shared this slide deck with you. And so you'll be able to do something with it. And I'm assuming someone will let me know if stuff doesn't appear to be working. So one of the key things about getting interaction happening on kids' devices, and I should put sort of two caveats here. Most of this interactivity that I'm talking about needs to happen in edit mode. It can't be done in presentation mode. And if you are using an iPad with your kids, you just need to double check that that everything is going to work as you'd expect on the iPad, that it's not too different to the Chromebook or the laptop. So this is an activity that came from some stuff we did with teachers around COVID time, where they wanted to do some measuring activities, but obviously didn't have the kids on hand to do that. So this is one of the things they came up with, where the teacher can just drag a rule around, do some measuring and go from there. Now, this works okay here, because everything else is in the background. So the only thing that can move on this slide is the ruler itself. So if we have a look, we're just going to jump back a slide. This is key for a lot of stuff that you might do in slides. So you can go through, you can set up your title, you can put your objects on the slide, you can label them A, B, C. I'm just going to be a bit lazy, I'm not going to do that. Because we don't want kids to drag them around, what we're going to do is we're going to come up to File, we're going to go to Download, and we're going to go to PNG, Download Current Slide. And you see down the bottom here, that's going to come to my Downloads folder. So if I go to a new slide here, I'm just going to delete this and delete this. So now I can go Slide, Change Background, and I can put the image that I just downloaded into the background. So I'm going to browse for it, and it should be here. So GEG interactive slides, we'll just use this one, open and done. So now you see when I click on it, kids can't be dragging this around the place. It's locked in place. If we just go back here, if I grab the ruler, Control C and paste it in here, Control V, I can drag this around and nothing else is going to drag with it. Now, I think that's really, really critical when you're doing some stuff. I'm sure as we get through this afternoon, Laura's going to show us some other ways to put this stuff in the background, but that's a quick way. If you've got a range of slides and you want to get your stuff in the background. All right, so that's the first thing. We have a look at this slide now. So this is like your hundreds board that you might be looking at with your kids, where you want them to be able to go through and put their numbers in a logical order. So let's have a look at how we might do that. So you can see here, this is just a table. So we go insert, table, and you can go through and you can set that table up. I'm not worried about that. Once again, I would go through, make an image of that slide, put it in the background so that all we have to worry about are these squares, these numbers that we've got here. So I'm just going to go with a new slide and I'll show you how we might do these. So delete anything else on your screen. So if we come up here to the shapes menu, I'm going to click on that. I'm going to shape. I'm just going to pick a square and just put it on the screen there. The first thing I'm going to do is come up to the fill color and make it transparent. Now you can do all sorts of formatting at this point. It's probably a good idea to do it now. If I want to put a board around it, I can do that now. I can also, in here where we're going to put our number, I can change the font to something like didactic, change it back to 11 point, maybe 10. I can also go through and do some centering. And that's important because what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this. All right, so Control C to copy it. And what we're just going to do is go Control V, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's how many I had in my original one. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this over here, roughly where I want to see it positioned. And notice when you do that, while you're holding down, that red line indicates the first one and the last one are centered. Right, so I can drop that. If I then go through and click on the canvas and select all of those, I can come up to Arrange, Distribute, and choose horizontally. And so now they're all equally spaced across the screen. If we come up to Arrange, right, so that's the Arrange menu again, up to Align and choose Top, they'll all be arranged equally across the screen. All right, all nicely proportioned. Obviously they're not going to stay that way with kids working with them, but that's okay. And then if we want to do the others, while they're all neatly lined up, Control C, Control V. Notice that I've got a four-headed arrow there. So if I just drag this, notice on the left-hand side, I've got that little red line, which indicates the left-hand side is lined up. And I just keep dragging them down. All right, so that's a great way just to go through and lay them out. The other thing is if we want to go through and put some sort of fill color, Control Z, undo that. I don't want to fill them all. But if I want to go through and just, let's say, do the even numbers one color, the odd numbers another. So if I just choose a color here, rather than going through and using your fill on each one, while that's filled, I can come up here to my paintbrush. And if I click my paint format, I can go through, and notice I only did one. If I double click, choose this color, if I double click on the format painter, I can go through and I can put the format in every box. That's a great way just to make sure that everything is neatly arranged. Obviously, something's gone awry there with my the formatting of my text, which I'll have to have a look at. Doesn't normally happen, but that's the way you can get your color. Look, and the last thing I just want to quickly show you is, so some of these are very, very similar. So slide 6 does the same sort of thing. Slide 7 is putting it to use in coding. The only other thing I just want to show you is that that's what they've done here, a very, very similar thing. So if I want to just drag that circle away, Control Z, because I've got my format painter still connected there. Just going to go Control Z, Control Z. All right, so if I just drag that away, if you go Control C and Control V and put lots of them there, if you just drag around them, go Arrange, Align, and first of all go on line left, and while they're still selected, arrange, align, and choose top. You can put 20 or 30 of them, 40 of them all on top of one another so kids can just drag them away. So you can use that for that sort of activity. You can use it for, I don't know which one I had. You can use it for teddy bear counters. You can use it for a whole range of stuff, just as a way of getting those counters there ready to use in your class. Look, so that's pretty much me. Right? There's some other stuff there. If we get a chance, we might go through and have a look at them. But I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to hand over to Chris. So Chris Betcher is the product manager for G Suite adoption, and Chris is going to take us through what he's got for using text and images in slides. And Chris, you're still on mute.
Right, sorry about that. I just need to find you, Paul, because it on Zoom on a Chromebook seems to make everything disappear for some reason. You can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, I can't see you guys anymore, so I don't know where you've gone. But anyway, doesn't matter, as long as you're there. Oh, wait, there you are. I don't know, but as long as you can see my thing. Hey, that was great, Paul. You've actually touched on some of the things I wanted to touch on, which is just the ability to manipulate stuff inside a slide deck. And I've actually, on our slides, if you can direct people to my slide here, it's just this address, bit.ly/gslides-demo2. There's a link there. If you just go to that link, it will ask you to make a copy, and you'll end up with a copy of this slide deck. When I used to work for EdTech team and we did a lot of Google Summits all around the place, I did this workshop with lots of teachers, and they always told me it was really useful as a skill building exercise. So I've given everyone a copy here if you'd like one. What it is a set of slides that teach you about how to do things in slides. And each slide will actually have a little skill on it. So this one, I'll get this one for example, like this slide says how to make a shape, you know, and then it'll give you some instructions here. Go to the shape tool up the top here, click on it, pick a shape, and then just pick a shape you want and drag it out, and that's how you draw a shape. So this slide deck starts with really easy basic stuff and works its way up to much more complicated stuff over on the other side. So I just want to take you through a couple of like simple exercises here about how you do it. Now, I noticed with yours, Paul, you very correctly told people that if they make a shape and they want to move it, they can pick it up and drag it. So you grab it with your mouse, move it somewhere else. Good to know also that you can just nudge it with your keys. So I'm just tapping the left key here, left arrow key, the right arrow key, down arrow key, and you can nudge shapes into position. But it's good to know too, if you hold down the shift key while you do that, you actually nudge it 1 pixel at a time. So sometimes if you're just nudging it, it just jumps in increments that are too big. So shift will make it just jump 1 pixel at a time. It's a handy thing to know. The alignment stuff you've already talked about, and that is about having multiple shapes. So like if I grab this shape here and I drag it, you'll see that like that red line appears. That's like one Paul was talking about before. If I drag it this way, that vertical red line appears, and that's telling me that it's aligned to the middle, or sorry, the center of the page. If I go down, it's the middle of the page, like that. And it's important to go to the next slide and show you, if you have shapes within a page, so I grab this red one, and I grab this red one and I move it across, that red line appears, right, to tell me it's in the center of the page. But if I move this red shape under the blue shape, you notice I also get a red line, but this red line doesn't go from the very top of the screen to the bottom. It actually goes from the top of the blue shape to the bottom of the red shape. So the alignment guides are actually pretty, I'll give you an example. If I move the blue one over near the middle, but not quite the middle, when I get the red one there, you can see the red one, that line appears between the shapes to tell me the two shapes are lined up. But if I can go a little bit further, I get a different red line that tells me now that alignment's between the page and the shape. So just little things to take notice of. You also get the same kind of thing too here. I've got two shapes here, and if I grab this one and drag it out, you'll notice I get to a point where it's the same length as the blue shape. Where are we here? There we go. If I go to the same length as the blue shape, I get the little markers underneath each shape to tell me they're the same length. If I did the same thing here with the width and I drag that up, I'll get to a point where it puts the markers next to each one to tell me that the height of those two shapes are the same. And so, you know, really good. A lot of people, when they're starting off with this, they see these little lines flash up. They don't quite understand what it's trying to tell them, but that's what it's trying to tell them. The other thing I noticed you just did, Paul, and it's a good tip, when you want to have multiple shapes, you can click on a shape and go Control V, Control C. Oops, sorry, what I did there. Control C, copy, Control V, paste, and now you have two shapes. But there's another nice little tip, and that is if you click on a shape and hold down the Control key if you're on Windows or a Chromebook, or the Command key if you're on a Mac, if you grab the shape and hold down that Control key as you drag, you actually make a copy. And so if you want to sort of, the trouble with doing the the copy and paste one is that when you copy and then paste, you end up with them sort of going into the position like diagonally down like that, and then you've got to move them. And so I find that if you just drag a shape while holding down the Control key, you can literally just put the copy wherever you want. If you have more than one thing selected at a time, you'll select both and copy both. So that's sometimes a handy thing to know. I noticed you put that number 3 in the middle of your square there, and that's really cool that you can do that. A lot of people don't realize, because I think in PowerPoint, if you want to have letters or numbers on top of a shape, you've got to create the shape and then create a text box and put it on top of the shape. But in Google Slides, the shapes are actually text box. So if you simply double click into a shape, you can type directly into the shape. You don't need an additional text box sitting on top. That's a handy thing to know. I'm just going to skip around here to some of the other little key things here you might be useful to know. Sometimes when you make shapes, you'll notice that they have this little yellow diamond on them. The yellow diamond actually tells you that that's an attribute of this shape you can change. So in this particular one, the yellow diamond, if I drag it, I can change the radius of the corners just like that. So you can make that slight adjustment. And every shape, if it can be adjusted, has a slightly different thing you can adjust because they're different shapes. So the smiley face, for example, little diamond there on the smiley face mouth, I can grab that and make it into a frowny face, for example. This one here, I never know what to call this. I call it the no smoking sign. But, you know, little yellow dot there, if you grab that and drag it, you can change like the width of the sign. This yellow one's an interesting one because it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 different diamonds. And if you adjust those diamonds, you can actually control all sorts of parameters of this actual shape. And so, you know, depending on what you want, you can adjust it any way you want. So there are lots of shapes in the shape tool here. If you look, you've got all sorts of like standard shapes there. You've got some arrow shapes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right there. So there's lots and lots of shapes to choose from, but even within all those choices, by the time you've fiddled around with the little yellow diamonds that are on a lot of them, you've actually got tons of variations on those things as well. I just want to give you an example of once you start to string all this stuff together. And by the way, you know, I showed you before how, if I'm just going to draw a shape on this screen for a second. I'm just going to draw a little circle. Right, so I'm going to draw a circle. If you hold down the Shift key, by the way, you'll get a perfect circle. So I showed you before how if you drag that shape while holding down the Control key, you'll get a copy. But there's another useful thing. The Control key makes it duplicate, so you end up with 2. Undo that. And the Shift key, when you drag it, means it can only drag in a horizontal or a vertical direction. So when I'm dragging, I'm holding down the Shift key as I'm speaking here, you'll notice I can't really move, even though I'm moving my mouse up and down, the shape is locked into sort of a horizontal track. Now you can combine those two ideas too. If you wanted a row of shapes across the screen, Control and drag will let you make a copy. Shift will keep it vertical or horizontal, and Control and Shift together will combine those. So now when I drag sideways, I'm making copies that are perfectly horizontally aligned. And if you notice, I'm actually getting the little guides between each one now telling me the distance between the shapes is the same. So there's lots of ways you can do this. Paul's method was amazing, where you can sort of drag your shapes out and then align the tops and align the centers and get them all aligned that way. But you can also just simply drag, Shift and Control, and you can get the same sort of effect. Now, just to show you how easy this is, I've got 2 squares here, a white one and a black one. I'm going to make this into a chessboard in as few different moves as I can possibly make. So I'm going to select both squares, hold down Control to copy, Shift to keep it in alignment, and I'm going to drag that sideways. So now I get 4 squares. Now I'm going to select all 4 squares, hold down Control and Shift, drag them sideways again. Now I have 8 squares, right? Now I'm going to select the whole thing like that, hold down Control, Shift, drag downwards. So now I have 2 sets of squares, but they're not alternating. So what I'll do is I'll grab this little handle and I'll rotate this around like that so it goes upside down. I'm going to hold down the Shift key at the same time. So when I get back to 180 degrees, it locks in place. So now I have a quarter of a chessboard. Select everything, hold down Control and Shift, drag it down. Now I have, oops, I didn't quite get that exactly right. Drag that down. Now I have half a chessboard, and I'll grab the whole thing again, Control and Shift, drag it down, and now I have a complete chessboard. And I think you can see that, like, once you master some of these little tricks, like, you know, this easy ability to shift and copy and drag, you can actually make quite complicated shapes that would have taken a lot longer to do if you were doing everything manually like that. So that's just a few tips there. I've given you the link to this slide deck. I used to give this to teachers and to students, and they could work through it at their own pace. Each slide just has a simple instruction on the side that shows you a new skill. By the time you get to the end down here, you get into quite sophisticated skills. The last one I want to show you here is, I think this is one of my top tips for Google Slides, because I like to get the layout right. I often want things in nice, neat grids. One trick you can do is, if you're using images, instead of having to resize all the images and get everything to a grid, just start with one image, duplicate it, so Control drag, grab them both, Control drag, so now I have 4 images, and then instead of trying to put 4 different images in and adjust them all, I'm going to go to one of the images here and go up to the menu at the top that says Replace Image. When I do Replace Image, I can now go to any of the image options here. I'll choose the one Search from Web, and maybe I want an image for summer. So we'll choose summer, and I'll pick a nice summery image here, maybe these beach chairs, right? And it's going to replace that image into the existing frame. So I know the size of the image is exactly right. I don't have to worry about resizing things to get things to fit. I'll just try that again with another one here. We'll go Search Web. This time I'll search for spring. Oops, if I can type it right. Spring. Okay. Close enough. There you go. So you notice that that image I chose was a long, wide image, but when it fits it to the frame, it actually trims off the bits so that it fits the frame. And that's a huge time saver if you're trying to make things, because, you know, doing it the other way, you've got to bring the image in and then crop it and drag it, and like, it can get really time consuming. So get all your image shapes and sizes right first, then just simply substitute in the images, and that's a much, much quicker way to go. That's basically me, Paul. I will stop sharing. If I can figure out how to stop sharing.
Chris, that was great. And for those who don't know, Chris in a former life was like an art teacher. Have I got that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. So you know, the information he's given us there. I mean, I know I learned heaps. I mean, there's stuff that you probably forget, but it's just a great revision. I probably should have had you go first, Chris, to lay that groundwork.
No. It was a good follow-on from you, Paul.
Yeah. The other thing that I included on slide 13 in the slides that I've shared with you is that Shapegrams by Tony Vincent.
Yeah.
Which sort of leads on from what Chris has been saying. I just think any of that stuff for some of our kids, great ways to help kids visualize stuff and to open their mind to new ways of doing stuff, to tap into that critical and creative thinking side of things. So that's great.
Paul, can I give a plug to something here? I used to do a lot of work with interactive whiteboards, and obviously not so much anymore. But back in the day when I came across this book called, it's Pan Macmillan, it's just called Interactive Whiteboards by Peter Kent. Peter's a good friend of mine. He teaches down in Canberra, and he wrote this book. It's not really about interactive whiteboards. It's about teaching strategies using interactivity. And if you can find a copy of this in your local library, it's got some great ideas that you can easily adapt to the sorts of things we're talking about today using Google Slides.
Chris, can you put a link, please, into that GEG or GEG slide deck? And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no worries.
All right. So thanks again, Chris. Excellent session. So look, up next we have Rolf Fotenhauer. So Rolf's going to take us through the session that he has, where he's looking at showing how he's used slides to make a phone app to help organise his students. So, obviously not terribly relevant to our primary school teachers, but there's some really interesting stuff there, I think, for our secondary kids, and a great way to help get them organised using Google Slides. So over to you, Rolf. Chris, I think we still need you to kill your screen there, but maybe no, we've still got the